Hey guys, welcome back. I wanted to do a video on who works in the hair transplant industry because I think it's something important to really understand. I will also add that I do not edit my videos. And the reason that I don't do this is just all coming from the top of my head, from what I know, and I'm not really in this for marketing. I'm in this to pass on information. And so there's a big difference. If you're looking for marketing, plenty of that on YouTube. But I would caution you that it is all a trap. Anyhow, in order to understand who these people are that work in this industry, we can go back to my first procedure, which was about 34 years ago. I was 23 years old. And like most 23-year-olds, I didn't really know much about how the world worked. You think you do, but you really don't. And I would say that still applies today. So back then, what they had was, as far as the procedure was, we didn't have a lot of information. And so we basically relied on, if there was a doctor out there performing this procedure, we would just go by whatever, whatever this person said. As far as me, initially, I got wind of this through, I believe there was an ad in the back of a TV guide, and it kind of intrigued me, hair transplantation, because at the time I had gotten a few comments that I was losing hair, and to be honest, I had a full head of hair. I just didn't realize it because hair was coming out in my hands as I showered, and so at that age you start to freak out, and all it takes is a few comments. So anyhow, I investigated this, and I went to this place here in Chicago, and I was greeted by what I would say was a marketer. I didn't know this person was a marketer at the time because I was 23 years old, and you assume that this person is working in a medical office. You kind of just assume that this person has something to do with the procedure, but the reality in hindsight was he was a marketer. He didn't really tell me much about the procedure. What he did tell me was that they could solve my problem. So in my mind, what I had imagined was hair being tweezed out and just kind of filled in, because I didn't ask. I didn't know to ask. But what it was they took a punch. If I were to pull this eraser off, and you see that about 4 millimeters, what they did was they took this to the back of my head and they cored out about 40 giant holes, and then they left those holes all open to heal. So I had 40 spaces in the back of my head where there was no hair growing. I didn't know that, only knew this after. And then they took those and they drilled holes in the front of my head, and they placed that amongst my translucent thinning hairline. Now these hairs, when they grew out, they were dark, thick hairs. It was impossible to conceal. I had to comb my hair forward. And even with that, sometimes it would catch an eye of somebody that was near me and they would start staring. Anyhow, I found out early on that what I did would change my life forever. If you see these people that are like attacked with acid, it's not so much the acid attack itself, it's the fact when they look in the mirror, they know that this can never be fixed. This will travel with them throughout their whole life. You cannot fix it. It's pretty much the same with a hair transplant. Once the damage is done, it's almost irreparable. You can kind of conceal it in ways, but once you are disfigured, that's it. There's no going back. You have to learn to live with it and adjust. This is what a hair transplant is about for a lot of people. Now, you have to keep in mind, when this doctor performed this procedure on me, not only was he in the room, but there were two other I would say middle-aged ladies that were also working with him. So these three people plus the marketer knew that they were going to disfigure me. This is without a doubt. They knew that they were going to disfigure me, and we're talking about for a very small amount of money. I think it amounted to like $1,200. So now let me ask you, what kind of person would knowingly disfigure a 23-year-old for $1,200? These are the kind of people you're dealing with. Now, you have to keep in mind, we all assume that we're like other people, but we're not. These people are unique, no different than a marketer. A marketer will do things for money that you probably wouldn't do. You just don't know that. You don't quite understand that. And you do not understand that at 23, that there are people out there that will do things that you would not do, all in their quest for money. So anyhow, I was disfigured from that. But my main point is those people, these are the people that work in the hair transplant industry. That's the majority. Are you going to find a few good people? Yes. But it's like a needle in a haystack. And before you find that needle, the chances of you being disfigured if you sign up are extremely high. Once the technology started to advance, and they found that if they could cut a big chunk from the back of your head and cut it up into little pieces and place it into the front, you can get a much more natural appearance. But there were other issues with that procedure when they cut out a big chunk from the back of the head. Many guys were disfigured as far as scarring in the back of their head, although these marketers would tell them, well, it would be a pencil-thin scar. Well, of course they're going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you something different. They're only going to tell you what's going to sell that procedure. And so this is what they were telling thousands and thousands of young men, that the scar would not be visible. And this is simply not true. As you age and the hair starts to thin, and depending on the width of that scar, it becomes visible. It becomes almost impossible to hide. Not only that, I had pain and numbness in the back of my head for almost 20 years. Do all patients experience that? Probably not. Do some? Do many? Yes. But they kind of gloss over all of that. Because if they were to tell you that, you wouldn't sign up. These are the people working in that industry. Now, FUE, which is the procedure you see today, uses this same small punch, but instead of 4 millimeters, it's 1 millimeter or less. So now the scarring in the back, you'll always have scarring. So when I say no scarring, what I mean is it's not visible. So depending on the size of the punch, the smaller the punch, the less visible any scarring will be. The problem with this procedure, though, is it came out in around 2000. There was only one doctor doing it out of Australia. And after that, a few doctors tried. Some pursued it, but the majority didn't. And the reason being is because it was very labor intensive, and they couldn't get the hang of the procedure without damaging the follicles. So this was the learning curve was very time consuming. So what they decided to do was to say they decided to dismiss the procedure. And they would tell patients or anyone that asked about it that it wasn't a viable procedure compared to cutting out a big chunk and leaving a giant scar in the back of your head. But the fact is that they were making money with that procedure. Trying to learn something new and having to do all the labor as opposed to handing it off to technicians, where they would place all the grafts and all the doctor had to do was cut out this giant strip, wasn't cost effective. So instead they lied. This is basically what they did. Thousands, tens of thousands of guys have been scarred simply because these people sold a procedure that was inferior to FUE as far as scarring up somebody's head, all for money. And they did this for almost over a decade. So these are the people that you're dealing with. So you have to keep this all in mind. If you think that you're going to find a doctor today that's on YouTube that's doing really great work because the marketer's telling you this, you have to keep this in mind. These are all the same people. All these people are in it for money. That's it. As far as doctors, there's less than a handful that I know of. And as always, the procedure is so limited. You're going to lose 50,000 hairs, most guys, and you can only bring back about 15,000 if you want to be realistic. If you see these people going overseas in these countries like Turkey, and they're having the back of their heads, I would describe as being raped with 10,000 grafts. When these guys get older, they're going to have very little, not zero, but they're going to have so little hair in the back of their head, they're either going to have to shave it, and if there's any scarring, just live with it, or they're going to have to wear a full cap wig. So basically, all you can really do is bring back about 25 to 30% of your hair long term. And if that hair is not placed correctly early on, you are going to look like a freak. If you're doing 5,000 grafts and you're just doing temple points here, and then you're going to have a hairline like this, when you start balding and losing more hair, and this breaks away from that area, you're going to be left with this. That's all. People are going to say, well, it's going to look. You're going to look completely bizarre. I know this because I've seen guys that have had procedures, older procedures, where they had hair here. Now this is all dropped. They've got a big gap, a big line here that goes all the way around because all this hair has been lost. They have a little bit of hair here, a round circle. It looks completely bizarre. And so this is what these guys are setting you up for. These are the people that work in this industry. Okay. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.